Hey guys, tonight we pull on a thread that unravels a conspiracy hidden in the most mundane of places. Imagine a fluorescent lit hallway, sterile and silent except for the low hum of a ventilation fan. A corridor of identical roll-up metal doors, each one a tiny vault of forgotten memories or hoarded junk. But one of these doors is different. It's not what's behind it, not yet anyway, but what's in front of it. A dog. A retired police K-9 frozen in place like a statue, refusing to move. Its handler pulse, the police whisper, but the dog just stares, its entire being locked onto a secret it can't speak. This is one of those stories that reminds you that the quietest people often have the loudest secrets, so you probably shouldn't be listening to this alone. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. It's your support that keeps these late night investigations going. And while you're at it, drop a comment with your city and what time it is where you are. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your name is Jack Callahan, and you're a private investigator who prefers missing pets to missing people. The pay is less, but the stakes are lower, and you haven't had to clean blood out of your car's upholstery in over 5 years. Today's case is the crown jewel of boring. Asset location for an estate. A man named Arthur Finch, a 60-something accountant, has died of a heart attack on his elliptical machine. He was tragically, almost comically ordinary. No wife, no kids, just a sister in another state who wants you to make sure she's getting everything her brother owned. Your job is to sift through the beige remnants of a beige life. This leads you to Secure You Store, a place where ambition goes to die. The manager, Sal, is a man whose face looks like a crumpled roadmap of bad decisions. He jingles a set of keys, his retired canine, a Belgian Malinois named Buster, trotting at his heels. The dog is the only interesting thing here, a sleek shadow of muscle and intelligence in a world of concrete and cheap metal. Finch's unit is C-27, he says, his voice raspy. Down at the end, mostly just boxes of files, I think. Paid his bill 3 months in advance right before he, You nod, following him down the long corridor. The air is cool and smells of dust and damp concrete. Fluorescent lights flicker overhead, casting long, distorted shadows. Buster's claws make soft clicking sounds on the polished floor. You pass C11, C12, and then it happens. Right in front of C13, Buster stops. He doesn't just pause, he freezes solid, planting his feet as if they've suddenly fused to the floor. His head is cocked, his ears are laser focused on the thin gap at the bottom of the metal door. A low, almost imperceptible whine escapes his throat. You stop. Everything okay with him? Sal tugs on the leash. Come on, you dope. Buster doesn't budge. He leans forward, his body a taut line of pure, focused energy. This isn't a dog distracted by a mouse. This is something else entirely. It's an odd, unsettling detail in an otherwise mundane day. The animal's silent, intense fixation is more unnerving than any bark or growl. That's weird, Sal mutters, yanking the leash again. Buster's muscles bunch, resisting the pull. He was a cadaver dog, before his hip went bad. Best nose in the state for 3 years running. And there it is, the first twist. This isn't just Sal's pet. This is the highly trained specialist, and his instincts are screaming that something is wrong with locker C13. The problem is, your paperwork is for C27. You have no legal right to be interested in C13. This brings up a fascinating legal gray area. In law enforcement, a certified canine's alert can provide the probable cause needed for a search warrant. The 2013 Supreme Court case, Florida v. Harris, even solidified that a dog's reliability, established through training and certification records, is sufficient. But Buster's retired, and this is a private facility. Sal can't just ape in a paying customer's unit because his dog is acting weird. Yet, the dog's certainty is absolute. He refuses to move. After 10 minutes of this silent, unnerving standoff, Sal, a man who has clearly seen enough in his life to trust a professional's gut, makes a call. 2 uniformed officers arrive, looking bored and skeptical. They listen to Sal's story, look at the motionless dog, and you can see them mentally filing this under weird afternoon. But Buster's file, which Sal conveniently keeps in his office, shows a decorated career. The officers, now intrigued, decide this is unusual enough to kick up the chain. A judge, likely spurred by the novelty of the situation, signs a warrant. The bolt cutter snaps the lock with a sharp crack that echoes down the hall. The officers roll up the metal door, revealing the locker's contents, and everyone just stands there, silent. You were all expecting the worst, a grim discovery, the source of a scent only a cadaver dog could detect. But there's nothing like that. Inside, there is no smell of decay. There is no body. The locker is the opposite of chaos. It's meticulously, obsessively organized. Metal shelves line the walls, holding dozens of identical gray string-bound ledgers, each with a neat label on the spine bearing only a year. Below them are archival boxes filled with what look like old photographs. There's no furniture, no junk, nothing personal in the traditional sense. It's less like a storage unit and more like a secret archive. And in the precise center of the floor, on a small black velvet draped table, sits one single object, a stunningly intricate, polished brass astrolabe. It's the second twist of the afternoon. The dog was right, but about what? One of the cops thumbs through the paperwork. "Well, I'll be," he says, holding up the rental agreement for C-13. The name on the lease is Arthur Finch. Your client, the boring accountant with the beige life, apparently had a second secret locker. A very expensive, very strange, very hidden second life. This is the third and most important irony of the day. You're hired to find the mundane assets of a dead man, and in the process you've stumbled upon a secret that's so profound he kept it in a separate, unregistered vault. The police are stumped. They find no evidence of a crime, no contraband, just old books, photos, and a bizarre antique navigational tool. They start talking about closing the case, chalking it up to the eccentricities of a lonely man. But you know better. And then there's the dog. Experts still argue about the full range of a cadaver dog's senses. Are they capable of detecting not death itself, but the faintest residual scent of a long-dead person handled on an object? Or perhaps the unique chemical compounds used in old photographic preservation, or the slow decay of ancient paper and leather? The dog's alert remains an unresolved anomaly, a question the police are happy to leave unanswered. But you can't. As the officers begin taping off the unit, you realize this case is no longer about finding assets for a grieving sister. This is about figuring out what kind of secrets a man like Arthur Finch would die to protect. The police, true to form, see no crime here. They see a dead man's peculiar hobby. An old dog had a weird moment, a judge signed off on a warrant, and now they're standing in a climate-controlled room full of dusty books and an old brass thingy. It's paperwork they don't want to do. The senior officer, a man whose gut is straining the buttons of his uniform, officially declares it a non-crime scene. Looks like Mr. Finch was just a collector, he says, the word hanging in the air, a lazy explanation for something he has no interest in understanding. The contents, he explains, will be turned over to the estate, which means they're turned over to you. You get on the phone with Arthur's sister, a woman named Carol who lives in Arizona and sounds perpetually tired. You explain the discovery of the second locker. You are careful with your words. You don't say secret conspiracy archive. You say additional assets of a historical nature. You emphasize the potential monetary value of the antiques to ensure she doesn't just tell you to junk it all. She agrees, her voice laced with the weary indifference of someone who just wants the whole ordeal to be over. Within a day, the entire contents of C-13 are in your office. The space, normally a landscape of case files and lukewarm coffee cups, now looks like a historian's fever dream. The ledgers are stacked on your desk, their gray bindings exuding a faint, dry smell of old paper and binder's glue. The archival boxes of photos sit on the floor. And on the corner of your desk, where your favorite cynical coffee mug usually sits, is the astrolabe. It catches the light from your window, its polished brass glowing with a warmth that feels ancient and intelligent. You start with the ledgers. You open the one marked 1988. The handwriting inside is impossibly neat, a precise, almost mechanical script. The pages are filled with columns, a date, a set of initials, a string of alphanumeric characters, and a final column with a single letter, either P for paid or U for unpaid, you assume. It looks like accounting, but it makes no sense. The numbers aren't dollar amounts. The initials, JRT, SL, are too generic to trace. It's a meticulous record of nothing. Next, the photos. You pull out a handful from a box labeled 1988, hoping to find a cross-reference. The pictures are candid, shot on film, with the slightly faded, nostalgic tint of the era. They show men in suits shaking hands on a golf course, a woman handing a thick envelope to a man in a trench coat near a city fountain. Two people silhouetted against the skyline, their heads close together. They are portraits of moments, transactions, but the subjects are always captured from a distance, or in shadow, or with their faces turned away, anonymous. The only consistency is that the quiet accountant Arthur Finch is never in them. He was the observer, the archivist, but never the participant. Then you see it. A photo dated October 12, 1988 shows two men exiting a courthouse. You flip back to the ledger. October 12, 1988, initials DM, alphanumeric string CATP-45B, status P. It's a match. And that's the first twist. These aren't separate collections. The photos are visual confirmation of the entries in the ledgers. Arthur wasn't just keeping books. He was creating a comprehensive multimedia record of these clandestine exchanges. As you sift through more photos, you notice a small, almost invisible detail. A watermark. You hold a print up to the light. It's a compass rose, but one of the points, the one pointing northeast, is slightly elongated, almost like a dagger. It's an odd, deliberate imperfection. You check the ledgers again, and there, in the top corner of every fifth page, is the same symbol, drawn in faint pencil. It's a brand, a logo for a club no one knows about. This is where the case crosses from strange to sophisticated. Criminal organizations have used codes for centuries. In Italy, the Sicilian mafia boss Bernardo Provenzano ran his empire for years using pizzini, small typed notes with coded language folded into tiny squares to be passed from hand to hand. What you're looking at feels like that, but colder, more corporate. This isn't a gang, it's a system. The meticulousness of it all points to steganography, the art of hiding a message in plain sight. Arthur's ledgers weren't nonsense. They were a language you just couldn't read. You spend 2 days trying to crack it. You run cryptographic analyses. You treat the numbers as coordinates, as dates, as stock market codes. Nothing works. It's frustrating, like listening to a conversation in a language you don't speak, knowing something important is being said, but being unable to grasp it. Your frustration drives you back to the astrolabe. It sits there, silent and smug. It's the centerpiece, the one object given a place of honor. Why? You pick it up. It's heavier than it looks, made of brass and copper with interlocking rings and pointers covered in fine engravings of constellations and zodiac signs. It's a beautiful piece of scientific history, an analog computer for astronomers. As you turn it over and over, your thumb presses against a decorative rosette on the base. You feel a faint click. The second twist. The rosette isn't just decorative. It's a button. You press it again, and a tiny section of the heavy brass base slides open, revealing a hollow compartment. Inside is a small, tightly rolled cylinder of parchment, yellowed with age. Your heart pounds. With tweezers from your desk drawer, you carefully extract and unroll it. It's not a map, it's a key, a cipher key. On the left are symbols from the astrolabe, zodiac signs, planets, stars. On the right are corresponding letters, numbers, and commands like Shift+4 or Invert Sequence.
It's the Rosetta Stone for Arthur Finch's secret world. Suddenly, you're looking at the ghost of a man who was not just an accountant, but a cryptographer, a spy master. There's a long-standing debate among historians about objects like this. Puzzle boxes, furniture with hidden compartments. Are they elaborate toys for the rich, tools for spies, or vaults for lovers' secrets? In this case, it was for hiding a conspiracy in a 5 by 10 foot metal box. With shaking hands, you turn back to the October 12, 1988 entry, CATP-45B. Using the key, you start to translate. C corresponds to a planetary symbol on the astrolabe, which the key tells you means court. T is trial. AP becomes appointment. The numbers, the key explains, are a cross-reference to a public record. You do a quick search. Record 45B from that day was the official appointment of a new judge to the State Superior Court. The initials DM belong to the man in the photograph, the one who got the job. And then comes the final chilling twist. You translate another entry, this one from 1995. What looked like gibberish slowly resolved into a cold, clear sentence. Zoning variance approved, waterfront project, obligation logged. This isn't a record of money. Arthur Finch wasn't tracking dollars and cents. He was tracking something far more valuable. He was the bookkeeper for a secret society built on the currency of favors, a hidden market where judicial appointments, political victories, and million-dollar contracts were traded like playing cards. And this quiet, dead accountant had been keeping the score for over 30 years.
The astrolabe isn't just a key, it's a skeleton key. It has unlocked a door in your mind, and now you see the shape of the thing. This isn't about money changing hands, it's far more insidious. This is a system of influence, a shadow economy where the currency is power. You, a PI who usually tracks down runaway cats, are now holding the complete transaction history of a secret society that has been manipulating your city for decades. You feel a cold knot tighten in your stomach. This is the kind of secret that doesn't stay secret for long once disturbed. It's the kind of secret that protects itself. Your first instinct is to go to the police, but which ones? The ledgers are full of initials, and some of them surely belong to people in law enforcement. You remember the bored, dismissive look on the senior officer's face at the storage facility. Was it disinterest? Or was it something else? A subtle steering away from a truth he didn't want uncovered. You're officially in paranoid territory, but paranoia feels like a healthy survival instinct right now. You can't trust anyone. Your only option is to keep pulling the thread, but carefully. You need a face, a name, a starting point. You scan the most recent ledger, the one for last year. Most entries are marked P for paid, but a few are U, unpaid, an outstanding debt, an unresolved transaction. That feels like a vulnerability, a loose end. You find one from 6 months ago. Initials, LK. Code, H-perm-app-den. Status, U. Using the astrolabe cipher you translate. H is for historic. Perm is for permit. APP is application. Den is denied. So someone with the initials LK had their application for a historic building permit denied, an unpaid favor. You dig into the city's public records, a thankless task that makes your eyes burn. After hours of searching, you find it, a denial for a demolition permit for the Old Lyceum Theater, a beautiful but decaying Art Deco building downtown. The applicant? A shell corporation fronted by a woman named Liana Cade. Liana Cade. The name rings a bell. She's a minor celebrity in the city, a sharp-suited real estate developer known for buying up historic properties and turning them into glass and steel condos. Her photo in a business journal shows a woman with eyes like chips of ice and a smile that doesn't reach them. She's exactly the kind of person who would belong to a club like this. You decide to approach her, not as an investigator with a dead man's conspiracy book, but as a potential customer. You invent a plausible pretext. You're representing a private investor interested in her portfolio, specifically properties with development challenges. It's thin, but it's the best you've got.
You call her office, and to your surprise, her assistant sets up a meeting for the next day. Too easy. That's your first warning sign. Her office is on the top floor of a skyscraper that stabs the clouds. The view from the waiting room alone is probably worth more than your entire life's earnings. When you're shown in, Liana Cade is standing by the floor-to-ceiling window, looking down on the city, like an eagle on its eyrie. "Mr. Callahan," she says, turning. Her handshake is firm and cold. "You were vague on the phone. I like efficiency. What do you want?" You launch into your story, trying to keep it steady. You talk about your investor, their interest in the Lyceum Theater property. You watch her face for any flicker of recognition, any sign that you've hit a nerve. But she is a mask of polite corporate interest. "The Lyceum is a dead end," she says smoothly. "The Historical Commission is intractable. A shame. It's a gold mine, sitting on a pile of dirt." This is your moment to gently push. My client believes that with the right incentives, certain obstacles can be overcome. You say the word incentives with a slight emphasis, and that's when it happens. A subtle shift. Her eyes narrow almost imperceptibly. The polite mask doesn't slip, but you can feel the temperature in the room drop by 10 degrees. This is the first twist of the conversation. She knows. Not what you know, but she recognizes the language you're speaking, the coded vernacular of the network. "My firm operates entirely within the bounds of the law, Mr. Callahan," she says, her voice flat and final. The meeting is over. She's shown you the door without standing up. You walk out of the building feeling a chill that has nothing to do with the air conditioning. You've made a mistake. You didn't just tip your hand, you waved a giant red flag. You were trying to be subtle, but to someone like her, your clumsy probing was as subtle as a brick through a window. That night, you're working late in your office, the glow of your monitor painting shadows on the stacked ledgers. The street below is quiet. Then you hear it, a soft scraping sound at the back door, the one that leads to the alley. You freeze. Your office is on the second floor. The only way to get to that door is via a rusty fire escape. You grab the heaviest thing on your desk, the astrolabe. It feels solid, reassuring. You creep to the door, listening. The scraping stops. A faint click. The lock has been picked. This is the second twist. They're not just watching you, they're coming for the evidence. The speed of the response is terrifying. You didn't just poke the bear, you kicked it in the teeth. In a panic, you look around your office, the ledgers, the photos. They can't get them. You do the only thing you can think of. You sleep the ledgers and a few key photos into an empty cardboard box, grab the astrolabe, and burst out of your main office door into the building's hallway just as your back door swings silently open. You don't look back, you just run. You spend the night in a cheap motel on the outskirts of town. The box of ledgers on the bed next to you like a sleeping child. You pay in cash. Your mind is racing. This escalation brings up a legal debate that has haunted prosecutors for years. Chain of custody. You have the evidence, but you obtained it through a series of legally questionable events, starting with the retired dog's sniff. Then, you removed it from your office, which was about to become a crime scene. A sharp defense attorney would argue the evidence is tainted through the poisonous tree. Experts still argue whether a PI's irregular handling of evidence, even if it saves it from being stolen, renders it inadmissible in court. You might have the truth, but it might be a truth you can never legally prove. The next morning, you called the police from a payphone to anonymously report a break-in in your office. You don't give your name, you just give the address and hang up. Later you drive by. Your office is sealed with police tape. You got out just in time. But you know they didn't get what they came for, which means they'll keep looking. You go back to your motel room, shaken but resolute. You look at the coded ledgers and the strange brass astrolabe. Then you notice an odd detail you missed before. On the back of one of the photos from the Lyceum, a picture of the building's grand decaying Art Deco facade, is a faint pencil marking. It's not a code. It's a date and a time from 2 days ago, a time when Arthur Finch was already dead. And next to it, a single, elegantly written letter, C. You realize with a jolt that Carol, the grieving sister in Arizona, was the one who hired you. the third and most chilling irony hits you. You weren't just hired to find assets, you were chosen. Someone knew what was in that locker, and they pointed you right at it. But who? And why?
The C on the back of the photograph is a crack in the foundation of your entire case. You've been operating under the assumption that you stumbled into this mess by accident, a random PI hired by a grieving, distant sister named Carol. But that single, elegant letter suggests something else. It suggests intent. The note was written after Arthur's death. Was Carol in town? Did she leave it there? Or does C stand for someone else entirely? The paranoia that was a quiet hum in the back of your mind is now a blaring siren. You retreat to the only place that feels remotely safe, a 24-hour diner with cracked vinyl booths and a coffee pot that's been stewing since the Carter administration. You need to think. You need to understand the machine you're up against. Spreading the contents of the box across the sticky table under the buzzing neon light, you get back to work on the ledgers. You've been so focused on the who and the what that you've neglected the how. How does this network actually function? With the astrolabe cipher as your guide, you don't just translate individual entries anymore. You start to map the connections. You trace initials across years. JRT gets a zoning variance in 89, and then in 91, a different initial, MP, has a pesky lawsuit against this chemical plant suddenly dismissed. 2 years later, JRT's unqualified nephew gets a cushy city planning job. It's not a series of one-off trades, it's a web, a complex interlocking system of favors owed and debts collected, all meticulously recorded by their silent scorekeeper, Arthur Finch. This is the first real twist of your deeper investigation. This isn't just a club for the powerful, it's a bank of influence. Members don't pay with money, they make a deposit by doing a favor for another member, killing a piece of legislation, approving a permit, making a key piece of evidence disappear. This gives them a credit. They can then make a withdrawal when they need a favor of their own. The ledgers are the bank's transaction records. The P for paid and U for unpaid are the accounting. Arthur wasn't just a bookkeeper, he was the Federal Reserve of favors. You uncover a chilling real-world parallel. You remember reading about the case of a corrupt judge, not in your city, but a famous one from years ago. This judge didn't take cash bribes, which are easy to trace. Instead, he took loans from lawyers who argued in his court, loans he never paid back. He would rule in their favor, and they would forgive the debt. It was a clean, sophisticated system of corruption that was almost impossible to prosecute because there was no direct quid pro quo. What Arthur's ledgers document is that same concept, but expanded to an entire city's elite. It's a conspiracy of polite, unspoken agreements, all laundered through a system of abstract credits and debits. As you decipher more, you begin to recognize names. The initials, once anonymous, start to connect to public figures. You match a 2005 entry about a suppressed environmental report with the initials of a man who is now the head of the state's Environmental Protection Agency. You decode a transaction that resulted in a lucrative public works contract and link the initials to a construction magnate who was one of the mayor's biggest donors. These are the people on the news, the ones cutting ribbons at charity events, their smiling faces plastered on billboards. They are the architects of your city, and they all have accounts at Arthur's bank. The sheer scale of it is dizzying, but then you notice an odd recurring detail. Every few pages in the ledgers, there's an entry that doesn't fit the pattern. It's not a favor between two members. The entry is always the same, a single initial, A, and in the transaction column, the word maintenance. These entries appear consistently, 4 times a year for 30 years. A for Arthur? Was he paying himself? But what was the service? Keeping the books? That doesn't feel right. The network wouldn't pay him for a service he was already providing. You cross-reference the dates of these maintenance entries with the photographs. It takes you hours, sifting through thousands of prints. Finally, you find a match, a photo from a maintenance day in 1998. It's not of a person. It's a picture of a safety deposit box being opened in a bank vault. The box is overflowing with cash, stacks of it. This is the second twist. The network did use money, but not for favors. This was their operating budget. This was how they paid for things outside the system, like hiring a specialist to break into a PI's office. And it was Arthur's job to manage it. This unassuming accountant was also a bagman. The discovery raises a classic unresolved debate in criminology. What motivates people empowered to engage in high-level conspiracy? Is it simple greed, a lust for more power? Or is it a defensive mechanism, a belief that they are the only ones capable of truly running things and that the normal rules are for ordinary people? Looking at the names in these ledgers, you see men and women who already have everything: money, prestige, power. This network wasn't about gaining more. It was about ensuring they could never lose what they had. It was about eliminating risk. It was about control. You're so absorbed you don't notice the waitress refilling your coffee for the third time. She slides the cup on the table, nudging a napkin dispenser. "Long night?" she asks, her voice weary. You just nod, lost in thought. As she walks away, you glance at the napkin dispenser, and you freeze. Scratched in the cheap chrome, so faintly you'd never see it if you weren't looking, is the watermark from the photos. The compass rose with the elongated northeast point. Your blood runs cold. You slowly raise your head and look around the diner, the greasy spoon you chose for its anonymity. The place is nearly empty. A trucker hunched over a plate of eggs, a couple of kids in a booth in the back, and the waitress who is now wiping down a counter, her back to you. But she's not looking at the counter. She's looking at your reflection in the polished coffee machine. And she's holding a phone. The third gut-punching twist lands. This wasn't a safe house. It was a trap. They didn't follow you. They were waiting for you. They knew you'd run. They knew you'd need a place to hide and think. And they had places like this staked out. Assets everywhere. The network isn't just the city's elite. It has eyes and ears at every level. The waitress, the truck driver, who's to say they aren't on the payroll too? You've been checkmated from the moment you left your office. You grab the box and the astrolabe, throw a 20 on the table and walk out, trying not to run. The cool night air feels like a slap. You're not the hunter anymore. You are the prey. And you're holding the one thing they're willing to kill for.
The compass rose scratched into the napkin dispenser wasn't just a symbol, it was a message, a very clear one. We are everywhere. You walk out of the diner and into the pre-dawn chill, the city lights painting the low clouds in sickly orange. Every shadow seems to hold a threat. Every passing car feels like it's slowing down to watch you. The paranoia is no longer a feeling, it's a tactical reality. They didn't just bug your office, they bugged your entire world. You need to get off the grid, but you have no idea what the grid even looks like anymore. Your car is compromised. Your apartment is a no-go zone. Every credit card transaction, every cell phone ping is a breadcrumb leading them straight to you. You ditch your car in a hospital parking garage, the best place to leave a vehicle undisturbed for a few days, and you toss your phone into a storm drain, watching it disappear into the dark. It feels like cutting off a limb, but a necessary one. You're left with a box of secrets, an ancient brass computer, and the cash in your wallet. You find refuge in the one place in the city that thrives on anonymity, the public library. It's a cathedral of silence and forgotten knowledge, a place where no one looks at you twice as long as you're quiet. You find a secluded carrel in the history section, surrounded by dusty tomes on forgotten wars and dead kings. It feels appropriate. You lay out the ledgers, the photos, and the astrolabe, your own secret history project amidst the public ones. You need to rethink everything. The break-in, the trap at the diner, these are the actions of a wounded animal, a powerful entity that is panicking. Why? Because you have their history, their identity, their single greatest vulnerability.
But as you sit there, surrounded by the evidence, a question keeps nagging at you. A loose thread on a perfectly woven tapestry. Why you? Of all the PIs in the city, why did Carol Finch, the grieving sister from Arizona, choose you? You pull out your original case file on Arthur Finch. The email from Carol, the contract. It all seems so standard. You were a good choice on paper. You have a reputation for being discreet, methodical, and most importantly, small time. You're not a hotshot who would bring a lot of attention. You're the guy who finds lost jewelry and cheating spouses. You're forgettable. And that's when the first, horrifying realization begins to dawn. You weren't chosen despite being small time, you were chosen because of it. Someone needed a pawn, a deniable asset, an unwitting fool to trigger the bomb and take the blast with him. You go back to that odd detail, the note on the back of the Lyceum Theater photo, the date, the time, and the letter C. You'd assume C stood for Carol, but what if it didn't? You stare at the elegant, looping script. It's precise, controlled. You've seen handwriting like that recently. Where? You frantically flip through the documents you have, the rental agreement for the storage unit signed by Arthur, the police report, and then you see it, the client contract, your contract, signed by your client. The elegant C in Carol's signature is a perfect match for the C on the photo. That should be a relief, confirmation of your theory, but it's not, because something else clicks into place. The photo. The note was on the back of the photo. How could Carol, who supposedly lived in Arizona and hadn't seen her brother in years, have gotten access to a specific photograph from inside a secret, sealed archive to write a note on it after her brother was already dead? It's impossible. Unless she wasn't in Arizona. Unless she was here. Unless she put the note there for you to find. This is the central, earth-shattering twist. Your client, the woman who hired you for a mundane asset search, is not who she says she is. The entire setup from the initial phone call to you finding the locker was a meticulously engineered sequence of events. The dog, Buster, wasn't an accident. His handler, Sal, the storage unit manager, was he in on it? Did your client know he had a retired cadaver dog? Did she somehow treat the locker with a chemical or scent that would trigger him? It seems insane, but no more insane than a secret society run by a brass astrolabe. Buster freezing at that specific door wasn't the coincidence. It was the trigger. It was the X on the treasure map, designed to force a legal entry and make the discovery of locker C13 look like a random act of fate. You were never the investigator, you were the investigation's first tool. This kind of elaborate manipulation has a name in the world of espionage: a patsy. Lee Harvey Oswald, the man who shot JFK, is the most famous example. The unresolved theory that has fueled conspiracy debates for over 60 years is that Oswald was set up, a known pro-Castro agitator positioned to be the perfect, obvious suspect, diverting attention from a deeper, more complex plot. You feel a sudden cold kinship with him. You've been perfectly positioned to take the fall, the bumbling PI who got in over his head and got himself killed, conveniently burying the conspiracy with him. So who is she? Who is this woman pretending to be Carol Finch? You search online, digging deeper than you did before. You search for Arthur Finch's family history, obituaries, public records, and you find it. Arthur did have a sister named Carol, but she didn't live in Arizona. According to a faded obituary from a small-town newspaper, Carol Finch died of leukemia 3 years ago. The second twist hits you like a physical blow, knocking the air from your lungs. Your client is an imposter. She's not his sister. She's a ghost, using a dead woman's identity. Every interaction you've had with her has been a lie, a carefully constructed piece of theater for your benefit. The tired voice on the phone, the desire to wrap up her brother's estate, it was all an act. Now the final chilling piece of the puzzle slides into place. You think back to the break-in at your office. You assumed it was the network, the people Liana K represents. But the timing was too perfect. It happened right after you made contact, flushing you out, forcing you to run with the evidence. It was an escalation. But what if it wasn't the network trying to get the ledgers back? What if it was your client, the fake Carol, making sure the ledgers were no longer safe in your office, making sure you were forced to take them with you, to become their sole guardian, their protector? The break-in wasn't an attack. It was a handoff. She didn't just lead you to the evidence, she made you its keeper. She has maneuvered you, with the precision of a chess master, into this exact position, isolated, terrified, and holding all the cards. But why? Why go to all this trouble? Why not just take the ledgers herself? The only answer that makes sense is that she can't. Maybe she doesn't know how to decode them. Or maybe, just maybe, she needs them to be found by someone with no connection to the network. Someone who can't be dismissed. Someone like you. The question is no longer who your client is. The question is, what is her endgame?
The library Carol, once a sanctuary, now feels like a cage. The realization that you've been played from the very beginning changes the entire game. Your client isn't just an imposter, she's a puppet master, and you've been dancing on her strings. She's isolated you, armed you with a conspiracy that could bring down the city, and then vanished, leaving you holding the bomb. The logical next step for a sane person would be to drop the box of ledgers in a dumpster and walk away. But you know it's too late for that. The network thinks you're the mastermind, and your client, whoever she is counting on you to do something. You're trapped between two invisible forces, and your only way out is through. You have to find her. You have to understand her motive. Going back to the very beginning, your first and only real link to her was the email she sent to hire you. You can't access your computer, but you'd printed the original email for your physical file. You pull it out. It's a generic Gmail address, probably a burner. But the email contains metadata, headers, routing information, things most people ignore. You use one of the library's public computers, routing your connection through 3 different proxy servers, a trick you learned from a paranoid hacker client years ago. It's the digital equivalent of wearing a fake mustache, but it's the best you can do. You analyze the header email. The message was sent from a public IP address which you traced to a coffee shop downtown. A dead end. But buried deep in the lines of code is the client identifier string, the digital fingerprint of the device that sent it. It's a specific model of a tablet, not a common one. An odd, specific detail. You search for the fake Carol's online footprint again, but this time you're not looking for her. You're looking for a ghost who uses a rare tablet and has a reason to dismantle a powerful secret society. It's a needle in a digital haystack. You find nothing. Defeated, you lean back, staring at the picture of the Lyceum Theater again. The one with the C on the back. Why that photo? Why the Lyceum? You pull up the public records on the theater again. The application for demolition by Leona Cade's company. The denial by the Historical Commission. You scroll through the commission's report. It's a dry, bureaucratic document, but it mentions the people who argued passionately to save the building. Local artists, historians, and one name that makes you sit up straight. Evelyn Reed, the chairwoman of the Historical Commission. Her bio says she's a retired architect, a fierce preservationist. You search for her name and an article pops up. It's a profile piece from a few years back, talking about her life's work. The article includes a photo of her in her study, and on the corner of her desk, partially obscured by a stack of blueprints, is a tablet. The same uncommon model from the email's metadata. This is the first twist. The elegant looping C wasn't for Carol, it was for chairwoman, Evelyn Reed, the head of the Historical Commission that denied Leona Cade's demolition permit, the unpaid favor from Arthur's ledger. But this doesn't make sense. If she's the chairwoman, she's the one who denied the favor. Why would she want to expose the network? You keep digging into her history, and you find the connection. 25 years ago, Evelyn Reed was married to a man named Benjamin Reed. He was a journalist, an investigative reporter known for his sharp mind and his refusal to back down from a tough story. And 25 years ago, Benjamin Reed died in a car accident, a single car crash on a clear night. No witnesses. The police ruled it an accident, a tragic, random event. You feel a cold certainty grip you. You go back to the ledgers to the one from that year. You scan the entries around the date of his death. And there it is, an entry for the day after his death. The initials match a man who was at the time a rising star in the district attorney's office. The code is one you haven't seen before. You work the astrolabe cipher. The translation is 4 simple, brutal words. Journalist problem. Resolved. Paid.
Your blood turns to ice. Benjamin Reed's death wasn't an accident. It was a transaction, a favor. He was getting too close to the network, so they had him eliminated. The case brings to mind the real-life story of investigative reporter Don Bowles, who was killed by a car bomb in Phoenix, Arizona in 1976 while investigating organized crime and political corruption in Arizona. His death exposed the very conspiracy he was trying to uncover, a phenomenon known as the martyr's dividend. His murder drew national attention that his articles never could have. And his wife, Evelyn, the woman who would become the chairwoman of the Historical Commission, knew. She must have suspected. She lived with that knowledge, that poison, for 25 years. She watched the men responsible rise to power, becoming untouchable pillars of the community. She couldn't fight them head on, so she waited. She played the long game. She got herself into a minor position of power, and she waited for her moment. Leanna Cade's demolition permit for the Lyceum was her moment. She denied it, intentionally creating an unpaid debt in the network's books. She knew this would create tension. Then, Arthur Finch, the network's memory, conveniently has a heart attack. And Evelyn, using the identity of his dead sister, hires an unsuspecting PI to find his assets, knowing full well what he would find in that locker. The second, stunning twist is the motive. This isn't about power or money. This is about revenge. A cold, patient, brilliantly orchestrated revenge a quarter century in the making. Experts on grief and trauma often debate the nature of closure. Some argue it's a myth that you can only learn to carry the weight. Others believe in finding justice no matter how long it takes. Evelyn Reed clearly subscribes to the latter. She has weaponized her grief, turning it into a tool as precise and deadly as the astrolabe itself. She needed a pawn, yes, but she also needed a partner. Someone who could see the pattern, connect the dots, and who was too stubborn to just walk away. She didn't choose you because you were a fool. She chose you because she researched you. She knew you were the kind of person who couldn't leave a puzzle unsolved. You have to find her. You leave the library and take a bus to her neighborhood. It's an old, quiet part of the city, full of historic homes and ancient oak trees. Her house is a beautifully restored Victorian, a testament to her life's passion. You walk up the path and knock on the door, your heart pounding a frantic rhythm against your ribs. The door opens, and there she is, Evelyn Reed. Older than in the photos, her face etched with a quiet sorrow, but her eyes are sharp, intelligent, and unwavering. She looks at you, then at the box in your hands. There is no surprise on her face, only a quiet, resolute acknowledgement. "I was wondering when you'd figure it out, Mr. Callahan," she says, her voice calm and steady. "Please come in. We have a lot to talk about." The third twist is the most profound of all. This isn't a confirmation, it's an invitation. You were never just a pawn. You were a candidate. And by finding her, you just passed the final test. You've been recruited into an alliance forged in revenge.
You step across the threshold of Evelyn Reed's home, and it feels like entering another world. Outside is the city of the network, a place of cold glass, steel, and secret handshakes. Inside is a world of warm wood, stained glass, and the smell of old books and lemon oil. It's a fortress of memory, and you realize you're standing in the command center of a one-woman war. She leads you into her study. It's the same room from the newspaper photograph, but now the blueprints and architectural models are pushed to the side, making way for what looks like a private investigation headquarters. Corkboards line one wall, covered in a spiderweb of photos, names, and red yarn connecting them all. It's Arthur Finch's archive, but reimagined. He recorded the conspiracy. She mapped its downfall. "Tea?" she asks, her voice betraying no nervousness. It's the calm of someone who has rehearsed this moment in her mind 1,000 times. You nod, still speechless, and place your precious box on a heavy oak table. As she prepares the tea, she talks. Her confession is not emotional or vengeful. It's delivered with the cool precision of an architect explaining a blueprint. She tells you about her husband, Benjamin, and how his investigation into seemingly unrelated zoning variances and court cases led him to sense a pattern, a hidden architecture of power. He called it the Society of Arrangements. He was killed before he could prove it. "The police called it an accident," she says, her back to you as she pours the hot water. "The district attorney, a man whose campaign my husband was investigating, closed the case in a week. That's when I knew.
They didn't just kill him, they erased him. This is the first raw emotional truth you've heard since this began. It's not about an abstract conspiracy anymore. It's about a man's life, stolen and swept under the rug. She explains how she spent years gathering whispers, rumors, and scraps of information. She learned about Arthur Finch, the quiet accountant who was the network's linchpin, their living hard drive. She couldn't get to him or his records, so she waited. When Liana Cade, a known network player, came for the Lyceum, Evelyn saw her chance. She created the conflict, the unpaid debt, then a stroke of luck, or perhaps something more, she implies, leaving the thought hanging in the air. Arthur died. The door to his secrets was suddenly open. I couldn't go myself, she says, placing a cup of tea in front of you. They know who I am. They know that I've been a thorn in their side for years over historic preservation. If I had been the one to find that locker, the evidence would have been dismissed as the vindictive forgery of a grieving widow. I needed an outsider, a clean slate. I needed you, Mr. Callahan. This is the first twist of your new alliance. You weren't just a tool, you were her alibi. Your discovery of the locker provides the evidence with a chain of custody that appears, on the surface, to be entirely independent of her role. You are the unimpeachable witness, the accidental hero. It's a brilliantly cynical manipulation of the legal system. This brings up a fascinating legal debate surrounding the concept of unclean hands. It's a doctrine that says a plaintiff who is himself guilty of wrongdoing in relation to the case at hand cannot get relief. Evelyn has masterfully laundered her revenge through you, but would a court, if it ever discovered her role, invalidate the entire case? Then she walks over to a locked cabinet and retrieves a small leather-bound journal. She opens it. It's her husband's last notebook. Ben was close, she whispers, her composure cracking for just a moment. He had found their central bank, their clearinghouse for the most sensitive transactions, but he never found out where it was. She slides the notebook across the table to you. You see pages of frantic notes, diagrams, and dead-end theories. And then you see it. On the last page, he drew a sketch of a compass rose, the network symbol, but his version had a small, almost invisible annotation next to it. It wasn't just a symbol for the network, it was a map. He theorized that the symbol itself pointed the way, the elongated northeast point. He thought it was a directional marker, he just didn't know the starting point. And then, looking from his drawing to the brass astrolabe on the table, you see it. The second mind-bending twist. The astrolabe isn't just a cipher key, it's a map of the city. The engraved constellations are not of the night sky. They are stylized representations of the city's founding neighborhoods. The zodiac symbols correspond to old district markers. It's a cartographical puzzle box. And when you align the astrolabe's rings to the date of the city's founding, an odd detail you remember from a historical plaque, the main pointer, the one that looks like a dagger, aligns perfectly with the elongated northeast point of the compass rose. And it points directly at one location. A place so obvious, so public, it's the perfect hiding spot. The city's main courthouse. The network's central server isn't in a shadowy warehouse or a private vault. It's right under the scales of justice. This calls to mind the real-life investigation into the Tangled Web conspiracy in Lucerne County, Pennsylvania, where 2 judges were found guilty of taking money from a private detention center in exchange for sending juvenile offenders to their facility. The corruption was happening right inside the justice system they were sworn to uphold. The audacity is the camouflage. Now, all the pieces are on the table. You have the ledgers, the photos, the motive, the cipher, and the location of their nerve center. The question is, what's the move? A data dump online? An anonymous package to the FBI? A leak like that would be chaotic, Evelyn says, reading your mind. They would discredit it, bury it in litigation, and paint you as a lunatic. The network would survive. They always do. She looks you in the eye, her expression hard as stone. You don't kill a beast like this by chopping off its head. You have to destroy its heart. We don't just leak the information, we choose who we leak it to. And that is the final brilliant twist. The endgame is not a bomb, it's a scalpel. Evelyn has spent years identifying the few powerful people in the city who are not part of the network. ambitious rivals, burned politicians, and journalists who were sidelined by the network's chosen players. People who have the power to act but have been held in check. Your final move is not to expose the conspiracy to the world, but to give the evidence, specific, curated pieces of it, to their enemies. You will give the evidence of the DA's corruption to his chief political rival just before an election. You will give the evidence of Liana Cate's insider dealing to a competing developer she nearly bankrupted. You won't just expose the network, you will arm their rivals and let them tear each other apart. You're not tipping the scales of justice. You're starting a war and walking away from the rubble. It's a cold, calculated, and deeply cynical move. It's not justice, it's chaos. And in the ensuing fire, Evelyn will finally get her revenge, and the city, for better or worse, will be irrevocably changed. The plan is set into motion with the quiet efficiency of a ticking clock. You and Evelyn spend the next 48 hours in her study, not as PI and client, but as strategists in a silent coup. You carefully assemble packages of evidence, each one a poison pill tailored for a specific target, a thumb drive with incriminating financial records for an ambitious federal prosecutor, a set of photographs for a hungry journalist at the city's second-tier newspaper, the one always getting scooped by the network-friendly broadsheet, a copy of a specific ledger page to a city councilwoman whose career was stalled by the network's kingmakers. You are not dropping a bomb on the city. You are planting seeds of destruction in the gardens of their enemies, knowing they will grow into a jungle that will choke the life out of the old guard. Evelyn, with her decades of observation, knows exactly who to trust, or rather, who to manipulate. She understands that the most reliable human motivation is not virtue, but self-interest. When the packages are sent, a strange quiet descends upon the house. There is nothing left to do but wait for the tremors to begin. The first news story breaks 3 days later, a small article about potential ethics violations in the DA's office. Then a second, about a surprise audit of Liana Cade's real estate empire. Each story is a small fire, but soon they begin to merge, creating an inferno of accusations, investigations, and resignations. The network, so accustomed to controlling the narrative, finds itself on the defensive, besieged from a dozen different directions at once. They can't fight a war on all fronts. Their power, built on secrecy and mutual protection, crumbles when exposed to the light. The city's thrown into chaos, but it is the chaos of a fever breaking, a necessary violence to purge a long festering disease. You watch it unfold on the news, a ghost in your own story. Your name never mentioned, your role forever a secret shared only between you and the woman who turned her grief into a weapon. The balance of power in the city is not just altered, it is shattered, leaving a vacuum that will take years to fill, hopefully by something better, or at the very least, something new.